All right, well, let's do some MSI rankings. First, before any of that, though, I must. Gotta put on the MSI glasses, baby. Hey, don't hit me with the question marks, okay? The plan is that I'm just going to go through all the players and rank them. Well, okay, I already have the players ranked. I'm gonna go through my tier lists and then just talk about every single player one by one. Top lane is the first one that I have up. And I don't do any of that one at a time suspense stuff. It's just right there, the entire tier list. So honestly, a lot of the player tier lists are going to look really similar. Like if you've seen any of the other ones online, mine's pretty similar to it. You know, it's there's like big gas at MSI because there's only a few teams participating from each regions. Eastern top laners, Western top laners, minor region top laners, and that's like pretty much how every single one of these lists look. However, let's say a few things overall about the list is that I think that the top lane pool at this tournament is actually really strong compared to usual. You would never say that Kia is a bottom two top laner at a tournament. Like that's not really something that happens often because Kia is really good in my opinion. Like Kia is a good top laner. The problem is that pretty much every region sent their best top laners for the most part. For the most part, that has like an asterisk on it. Like obviously Oscarinen is not one of EU's best top laners, but like for the most part, the regions all sent their best top laners. So it's a tough life out there. So let's just go through all of these one by one. So at the top, I have Keen. I think Keen is the best top laner at the tournament. I think Keen has been the best top laner in the world since 2018. So anybody who's been around on the channel for a while already knows that I would have Keen at the top here because I'm just a big Keen fan. I think that the way that Keen plays the map and the way that he plays out all of his lanes is pretty much about as perfect as you're going to get from a top laner currently. One of Keen's big specialties is that he'll take a matchup that should be losing and he'll find a way to just equalize it or completely flip the matchup. Or he'll take matchups that are skill matchups and then he'll just find ways to find small advantages. Now, I know that there are a lot of people who definitely aren't as high on Keen as I am, but I think the reason why is because Keen is not a flashy player. You're never going to see some crazy Keen quadra kill. Like, that doesn't really happen. He's just a very solid, fundamental player. He plays all of the matchups as well as he can, wins matchups that he honestly has no right winning. Like, he'll just find ways to turn unplayable matchups into playable matchups, and I think that's like a trademark of just an insanely good top laner. And I think that a lot of people also underestimate how smart the guy is. Like if you look at game one of LCK Grand Finals, a lot of people were touting that game as like, oh my god, this is the game. This is like, look at how crazy Gen G's macro is. But pretty much all of the macro is like actually off of Keen's map rotations because he. Hold on, let me pull it up. And Corky catches the wave and runs mid, and then Keen runs bot and catches that wave, and then he's gonna shove that wave out and then move mid again. And like the thing that makes this play possible at all is the fact that Keen has Swifties. Like it's just like it's just the small things. Like it's always the tiniest things that you would never think about that Keen just does that takes all of these games and just like flips them into his advantage. And in this game, it was the fact that he bought Swifties because he was using those boots to move around the map like so often. Like there, if he doesn't have Swifties, he doesn't get to that bot wave in time. There's another one where he ends up like rotating top later and he barely makes it top lane because he has the Swifties. So like he can roam so aggressively with those boots and he does like pretty much perfectly. So yeah, it's just the small things. I really think that Keen is just insane. 369 is also a very similar player to Keen in the sense that he is really good at taking isolated lane matchups and just finding ways to turn even matchups into winning matchups or losing matchups into even matchups. I just really value that from top laners, the ability to, at least in this current meta where a lot of teams are focusing on these strong bot lane 2v2 combos and who has the pushing bot lane. Okay, all the junglers need to be going bots, that way they can help their pushing bot lane Like it's very much a bot centric meta, so a lot of these top laners are now being weak sided and they're kind of left to their own devices. And the two best top laners at being isolated in lane like that are definitely Keen and 369. At Worlds on my tier list, I had been in S tier also with 369. I think that the difference this split that pulls 369 up a tier is that one, Bin is being weak sided, so he doesn't look as good. I'll like talk about Bin later. But two, 369 is now on a worse team on paper, and he still looks just as insane. And he like single handedly took top esports from like a fourth, fifth place team all the way up to second place. Like it was pretty much just 369. Like all of the other players are, well, no, that's a lie. I mean, like Jackie Love and Bako look insane. They're probably the second best bot lane in LPL. But like, you would not really expect a team with those names to be making MSI, and it's pretty much all off the back of 369 just being a crazy good top laner. I think 369 has adjusted super well to the meta. I think 369 has picked up Udyr, Rek'Sai. That's like the other thing about Keen is that both Keen and 369 really did a good job at picking up all of the new champions that were being played and learning all the matchups really fast. And these two players are also pretty much the only two players on this entire tier list that I would trust with the Urgot counterpick into Rek'Sai. Like, because that kind of came out of nowhere was when Rek'Sai became meta. A lot of people realized that Urgot is pretty good against Rek'Sai in lane, so a lot of people started picking it. But some people just can't pull it off. And Keen and 369 are the two Urgot players where they counterpick the Rek'Sai, and I'm like, yeah, this is gonna go well for them. They know what they're doing. Every other top laner, they can pick Urgot. I don't actually really expect them to find any meaningful advantages from it. I guess 369 does have flashier moments. Like, he had that one Rumble Quadra kill that was insane against Weibo, like, near the beginning of the year. Yeah, not much else to say on those guys. I just think Keen has been the best top laner in the world for over half a decade, so I have him first. All right, Bin. So why is Bin in A tier and not in S tier? So he's in A tier because one, he kind of got bodied by 369 in finals. Like there's no getting around it. Bin was not the better top laner in that series. Two, I feel like the meta definitely doesn't suit him as much. Um, like Jax is pickable in the current meta, but teams have just been permabanning Jax against him. Camille did get buffs. Maybe we'll see Camille, but like Gangplank's not in the meta. Fiora's not in the meta. So Bin's champion pool is a little bit more limited, and then that combined with the fact that teams are playing a lot more heavily towards bot side, especially BLG, because Shun, Elk, and On have pretty much just been a three-man army bot side, all split long. So Bin has kind of taken a little bit of a backseat. Like he's still insane. He's still going to win a lot of lanes, and he can definitely still pick like Aatrox or something and carry a game. Or like if he ever gets his hand on Jax, then that's good for him. But I just don't think he fits the playstyle of this current meta nearly as well as Kane in 369. Zeus also in A tier. I mean, I'll just come out and say that I just don't think Zeus has ever been better than Keen at any point. And now I know that's going to be like kind of a hot take, but I think in 2021, even when Keen was still on Kwangdong Freaks, I always just thought that Keen was a better player. And like any time that Keen and Zeus met up, it seemed like even when Keen's teams had like massive jungle gap, like massive team gap overall, he was always just chilling. Like I think he's just a better top laner. Like I think that Zeus doesn't have like enough experience with lane matchups to be better than Keen. And I also think that Zeus is kind of having the same problem where he's not able to pick up the same meta champions as well. Like he struggled with Rek'Sai, he struggled with Udyr, in my opinion. He kind of gravitated a lot towards Twisted Fate. He had a few Vayne games in playoffs too. I don't know. I feel like it's really difficult to play Vayne in this meta when you have all of these volatile bot lane combos like Kalista Renata, Ashe Varus. Well, it'd be Varus Ashe. Like Lucian Nami. Like you have all these like super priority bot laners that like really want to get ahead early in mid game. Like Draven's in the meta too, and it's like I don't know. Me personally, I don't want my top laner picking Vayne in this meta because my jungler is not going topside at all. So I feel like it's just I feel like Zeus and Bin like are running under the same problem where they just didn't adapt to the new meta champions as well as Keen and 369 did, and they're not as good at isolated lane matchups 1v1. Impact like super overperformed during playoffs in my opinion. He was going absolutely crazy. Probably the best I've seen Impact play since like Team Liquid 2020 Worlds. Like that's how good Impact looked. He was winning all of his matchups. He was outplaying dives 1v3. Like the guy was just destroying everybody in the region. So I value Impact pretty highly. So I had him at the top B above Broken Blade. Uh, for Broken Blade, it's like never really performed up to expectations internationally. And in terms of domestic talent, it felt like G2 didn't need to try as hard this split. Now, I do like Broken Blade for like Broken Blade pretty much single-handedly introduced Zac into the meta like worldwide. At least my impression of it was that Broken Blade was the person who pioneered Zac into the meta. And then now obviously you've got like Zeus was playing Zac, uh Oscar Innen's playing Zac. Like Zac was like not a thing before Broken Blade just pulled it out in Winter Split. So a lot of credit to Broken Blade for creativity, but I just haven't seen Broken Blade really push through the best top laners yet and beat them in lane. Like he's really good at destroying teams that are worse than him. Like if anybody remembers how Broken Blade like manhandled Loud on Darius last MSI, that was pretty crazy. But I don't know. I've got no faith that Broken Blade can win lane against any of the Eastern top laners. I don't think that if Impact's still on his playoffs form, I don't think Broken Blade would break through Impact either. So I have Broken Blade there. Let's see. Is each row also ordered or no? Yes, they're ordered. So um, it'll become more clear when I show like the final spreadsheet where I rank them all. But yes, everything is in exact order. So I think Keen is better than 369, Ben is better than Zeus, like Impact is better than Broken Blade, Broken Blade's better than Blippo, etc. Blippo's kind of got the inverse problem of Impact, where like obviously Blippo's one of the best top laners in NA, but he kind of underperformed in playoffs. I don't know, man. What can I even say about Blippo? Like the guy's really creative. He has good picks. He plays very aggressively. So it'll be fun to watch Blippo versus the Eastern top laners if we ever get to see it. Because like Blippo is not the type of top laner to be like, oh my gosh, I'm playing against a top laner who's so much better than me. I have to slam Ord and Gragas and like super weak side and then just like play to lose lane by 20 CS. Like Blippo's going to still just he's going to pick the exact same champions that he always picks and he's going to throw hands and like try to beat them in lane. Like that's just the kind of guy that Blippo is. Like I think that he's like the same archetype of top laner that Keen and 369 are, where he's like very matchup dependent, where he really likes to play the matchup. Like he likes to pick champions that he knows how to play the lane matchups and that he knows will compositionally counter the enemy team. That's one of my favorite things about Blippo is that he's always thinking about like, okay, this is what the enemy team has, this is what their win conditions are. What champion could I pick in this situation that not only dismantles their entire team, but that I can also be fine in lane with? Which is why Blippo has like so many crazy creative picks that come out of nowhere. What do you think about his Olaf? I like his Olaf. There was one game in LCS this year. I don't remember which game it was, but I think it was like earlier in the year. But Blippo picked Olaf on like it was like on 4 or 5 or something. Like after he had seen the majority of their team comp, and it was like the most insane. Like it was the most like perfect Olaf pick ever because the enemy team had zero answers for it, and then Blippo like pretty much was just able to 1v9 the game. And like afterwards, he was in an interview. He was like, "Yeah, I looked at what they had, and I was like, they forgot that Olaf exists, so I just picked it." It's like he's always thinking about all of his options of what he can play in the moment that would be best in slot. And that's the other thing is that Blippo's like a really confident player. Like if he thinks something is best in slot, he'll just pick it. So honestly, like, respect. But yeah, Blippo did underperform in playoffs. Impact was definitely the better top laner, so that is why we have that order. Oscar Renan. So I know that a lot of people are like really low on Oscar Renan. Like they don't think that Oscar Renan is that good, but I haven't completely lost faith in Oscar because I still like I always think back to Oscar's debut where he had like the worst debut ever of like that you could possibly imagine. He played like the shittiest first week ever. I think his he was like 0 kills, like 20 deaths or something like that. I don't even remember what it was, but it was bad. Maybe he was like 1 in 20 or something, right? And it wasn't on like tanks. He was picking carries. Uh, and then everybody was like, "Man, why would Fnatic put this guy in? He's so bad." And then in the second week, Oscar like he played a little bit better. He was like holding his own, whatever. Week 3, he was just like slamming jacks and like destroying everybody. Like so, I still haven't forgotten that Oscar has the ability to just kind of like turn it on and compete with the better Western top laners. So like I don't think Oscar is some like crazy terrible top laner that some people would have you believe. But that being said, Oscar was definitely not in consideration for the best European top laners. Um, Off the top of my head, like Broken Blade was better. Irrelevant. I you could have made an argument for Merwin at points. Am I forgetting anyone? I feel like I'm forgetting someone. Like either way, the point being that Oscar was like a middle of the pack LEC top laner, and like if you're a middle of the pack LEC top laner, like you're just not going to be on the same tier as the other major region top laners. Like Impact and Blippo are the best top laners in LCS. Like they just sent the best LCS top laners, and like Oscar's not a tier above the minor regions because like Ozzy's one of the best top laners in PCS. Robo is the best top laner in CBLOL. Kiaya is the best top laner in the VCS. Like these guys are all at the top of their regions, even if their regions are perceived as weaker than the LEC. And Oscar's just kind of stuck in the middle of the LEC, so we're like relatively in my head, I just view him on the same level. Speaking of minor regions, yeah, so we can start with Ozzy. And I guess this is where my only value to the conversation actually comes in terms of making player tier lists, right? Because I actually went through and I watched all these regions, although I will put an asterisk on it. I'm going to be very transparent about what I watched and what I didn't watch. So for the major regions, I watched every single game. LCK, LPL, LEC, LCS, I watched all of the games. PCS, I only watched like about half of playoffs and like a few weeks of regular season. That's all I watched for PCS. For CBLOL, I watched the same thing, about half of playoffs and a few weeks of regular season. VCS, I only watched 2 series of playoffs. Like I pretty much only watched GAM's playoff run because as soon as I heard about the match fixing scandal that happened, like all of my interest in the VCS just like died out on the spot. So I just completely ignored the region like for the entirety of the season until playoffs came around. And I was like, okay, I'll watch all of GAM's playoff games so I can actually talk about their players, like whatever. But like I didn't actually watch their regular season, so I don't know like their trajectory or like what they were like. But I can have a general idea because this is not Kiaya's first international tournament. Like he was at last year's MSI and Worlds, so like I know the guy. But and then LLA, I only watched playoffs, no regular season, just playoffs. Okay, so let's start with Ozzy. So Ozzy has a different identity this split than he did last year. Last year, Ozzy was very much the Cassante, Ornn, Gragas, Malphite. I'm gonna pick a tank. I'm just going to sit there and go down by 20 CS and then like play for team fights later because my team has better macro than everybody else in the PCS. And that was like his playstyle. He just kind of sat weak side and let his team, who were all better than everybody else in the region, just kind of win the games for him. He does not play like that this split. He's taken a much more proactive role for his team because the new champions in the meta are like really really good for him. specifically Udyr, Rek'Sai, and Rumble. Those three champions, like Ozzy, just like it feels like he seems really comfortable on those champions, and he's been like playing a lot more for his own lane, trying to get advantages in lane. I think another big difference was the addition of Void Grubs, and then now he's like playing a lot more like skirmish heavy, and he's like really showing that he like isn't just a tank merchant. So I've been impressed with Ozzy's year. Like in the past, I would have said that he was probably worse than Robo and Kiaya, but like he's definitely having a good time in the meta. So respect to that guy. I would not be surprised if Ozzy was also better than Oscar. I'm a little bit hesitant to say that just because of like really the thing that's saving Oscar is how he performed last year. Like I still have in my brain like summer Oscar, like summer 2023 Oscar, and I'm like, yeah, this guy can turn it on at times. So it's like Ozzy has never been on the same level as Oscar's like third week of his debut. Like he's just never been at that level. But current form, I could see it going either way. Okay, Robo. So Robo is his playstyle has also changed a little bit from last year. Last year he was, and the year before that, honestly, like for 2 years straight. No, honestly, before that, for like, okay, so Robo's like really old. Well, he's not old, but like he's a veteran in the CV lol, and he's always had the exact same playstyle of I'm going to pick like the most lane stompy champion I can think of, and I'm just going to run it down top, and either I'm going to carry my team and go 20-0, or I'm going to single handedly lose my team the game. And that was just how he played. He's also like he's got a reputation for not giving a shit about regular season. Like he so Loud as a whole, what would happen like every single regular season because they've won 4 tournaments in a row, right? And in all of them, it was like the exact same thing where Loud was like, "Man, we don't give a shit about regular season. Let's just play to be like top half." And then they get to playoffs and they just kind of 3-0 everybody, and that's like just kind of how their team works. But Robo's changed. He's playing a lot. I think that something has. I think Robo's realized that he wants his team to find more success internationally. Like I think Loud are starting to believe that they can be the best minor region because like you have they beat Gam at MSI 2023 and then obviously they went and lost to Gam later, but like they beat Gam, they contested PSG. I remember at Worlds 2023 they actually like really wanted to play PSG again because they wanted to show that they were better and that they could win, and then obviously they didn't. But I think they got a taste for it. They got a taste for realizing like hey, we've beaten Fnatic, we've beaten Gam, we've contested PSG, we almost took a game off of G2. Like we're a team, we can like do something, and then so they've been playing a lot more macro heavy. They've been trying at least. I can talk about it like more when I talk about Tanones, but like Tanones has been playing more roaming champions, and like the big thing with Robo specifically is that he's been trying to be more consistent. He's kind of stopped coin flipping everything, and now he's only coin flipping most things. And it's like don't get me wrong, Robo's not some like solid stable player. Like he's still like a super high energy coin flippy player, but like just less so than before. He's definitely trying a little bit harder to play all the matchups properly and like with discipline and allowing his team to be more consistent because their bot side can be very strong later in the game. Like Route is pretty good on like late game hyper carries. So yeah, that's also why I have Robo over Kiaya. Now I think that like with this list, I think it could go like you could put C tier in so many ways in my opinion. Like if you had this, I would be okay with it. If you had this, I would be okay with it. You know, if you like something like this, I'd be fine. If you moved Kiai up to B tier, I'd be like, you know what, sure. Like if you moved like Ozzy up to B tier, like fine. Like that, you could organize it in so many ways, and I think that like all of them are valid. Because like I've said earlier, I think Kiai is actually a pretty good top laner. I don't think like there's no disrespect to Kiaya for being this low on the tier list. Like he's the best top laner in Vietnam. He has been for like honestly like multiple years. He played really well in the Asian games. I don't remember which team. What was it? The Chinese team or the Korean team that Vietnam played against? Whichever one it was, the Vietnamese team did surprisingly well against whichever one it was that they played against, and like Kiaya was like doing well in that series. So like this guy is definitely a good top laner, and like I think if SoftBank Hawks had won finals in PCS and Pain had won finals in CB LOL, I think you would easily put Kiaya like over Weiser and Evie. Like I don't even think it's close. The problem is just that Ozzy happens to be probably the second best top laner in PCS, behind Rest. Because I don't think Solo Kill's playing in PCS anymore. I could be wrong about that, but like Ozzy's like top two, top three in PCS. Robo is like undisputed best top laner in CB LOL, in my opinion. So Kiaya just like happens to be against unfavorable competition, like when you compare them. But I mean that's why the top lane tier list is like so top loaded, right? That's why I have 11 of the 12 top laners in C tier or above, whereas like in the past sometimes I put more people into D tier. Like you'll see on some of the other lists that I have a lot more people in D tier. How big is the difference between bottom tier and top tier on these lists in your opinion? So I always do it the same way. Like you can see that there's nobody in F tier, right? And that's because I don't think there's a single F tier top laner in the tournament. Um, Now at like Worlds 2023, when Oppamen was playing, like Oppamen was an F tier top laner. So like the standard is the same. Like I think like these tiers have nothing to do with like comparative to the other players in the tournament and everything to do with just how good I think the players are like as a whole within like the entire scene. If I like okay, if I was doing a tier list of every single top laner in the entire pro scene right now, all of these players would be on the exact same tier as I have them, if that makes sense. So like I think Kiaya's a top of C tier top laner comparative to every other top laner in the world right now who plays in pro play. And I guess that's like the other thing that I really need to emphasize is that like these three top laners are like at the top of C tier for the entirety of like all the minor regions. Like there's you could take like any other top laner from a minor region and like slap them on this list and they would probably be like they would either be C tier lower than Kiaya or D tier or F tier. Like um there's nobody else I can think like I would put if Rest was in this tournament. Rest would be probably right above Oscar. Like if let's see, best LJL top laner. If Evie was here, Evie would be probably like top of D tier or like bottom of C tier. If Weiser was here, he'd be D tier. Um, the only other minor region top laner right now that would be like higher than all of the minor region top laners at this tournament would have been if Rainbow Seven won the LLA because then they have Summit and Summit's just like a B tier top laner because he like was really good in LCK. He was pretty good in LPL. He was like top of the table in LCS. So like the guy has obviously proved his worth as a top laner. So if Summit was here, he'd be higher. If Rest was here, he'd be higher. Any other top laner I can think of from a minor region would be lower than Kiaya. So yeah, it looks bad, but just Kiaya's good. Trust me. Okay, Zothve. So the main problem with Zothve for me is that he's been pretty good domestically. Like if you watch Astral's series versus the team is slipping my mind. The team that they played in the first round that they like 3-0'd them. It was not close. In that series, when Zothve was against like the average LLA top laner, he was like destroying the other guy. Like he was like massacring the other guy. But when Zothve went against Rainbow Seven and he was against Summit, who was obviously a much stronger laning top laner, he was struggling. I'll just say that. Pretty much he was just put on Aatrox and Rek'Sai duty, and he was told the weak side. He was like I think the entire team had accepted that Zothve was just not going to beat Summit, and then so they forced Zothve to like weak side on like the champions he was most comfortable on. And even then, like Zothve was playing Aatrox, Summit was playing full tank Karma. Summit solo killed Zothve in lane. Like it's like even if Zothve is like good domestically, he's never proven that he can hold his own against like an actually better top laner like Summit. Whereas like you look at the other top laners, like Kiaya did really well in the Asian games against the best Eastern top laners in the world. Robo won the Aatrox versus Fiora matchup against Wonder when Wonder was like on Fnatic in Worlds 2022. Like he's proven that he can beat them. Like Oscar has been a top level LEC top laner before, or like Ozzy. He's been playing against Rest domestically. He's been playing against Hanabi. He played against Solo Kill. Like all of the top laners in C tier have shown to me that they can either match or beat major region top laners. Zothve has never shown that to me, and the only time that I got to watch him play against a major region top laner, which was Summit, he got solo killed against Tank Karma. So I don't think Zothve is on the level of a C tier top laner. That said, I don't think Zothve is an F tier top laner either, because anytime I've seen Zothve play against a domestic top laner, he destroys them. He's clearly one of the best top laners in the LLA. The LLA is one of the weaker minor regions in my opinion. Any of the major region top laners in the region just kind of like roll over Zothve. So that's why I have him in D tier. I gotta copy this tier list a day in advance. Yeah, I made this tier list uh, about a week ago. We did it on stream. Well, I didn't make the tier list, but like I ordered all of the players on stream about a week ago, and I've only made like very minor adjustments since then. All right, junglers. Once again, no suspense. It's already done. There it is. See, this is like what I was saying with the top laners, where the tiers are not comparative between the people at the tournament. It's comparative of my overall impressions of the players, like throughout the entire world. Like, obviously, if I was making a tier list just based on these players alone, I would not have half of the junglers in one tier. Like, it's like the reason why I have half of the junglers in one tier is because I think that I think that, like, you could have put any junglers from any of the teams on here, and those guys would still be on the same spot. All right, let's talk about it. I think Shun is the best jungler at the tournament. I know that there are other people that think that Canyon's the best jungler, but I think it's Shun. Shun has been a top 3 jungler in LPL for the past few splits now, which is really impressive because, in my opinion, player pool wise, the LPL is always going to be more competitive than LCK because you have 6 more teams than the LCK does. Being top 5 in your role in the LPL, in my opinion, is like roughly equivalent to being top 3 in your role in the LCK. So like Shun he's pretty much only competing with Kanavi and Milky Way. Those are the other 2 junglers that would make up the top 3 slots. Where you would want to put Shun is pretty up for debate. I know that some people think that Shun is better than both of them. My personal list, I think that Milky Way is the best jungler in the world right now, so I would have Milky Way first, and then probably Shun second and Kanavi third. But that's why I say top 3, is because it's very up for debate. You could put Shun, Milky Way, and Kanavi in any order, and it would be reasonable as long as you had like a good justification for it. So Shun is very good at playing out like early games and early game map states. Like he is pretty much like when you have a team whose entire identity is making early plays and early dives, like yeah, some of them are set plays, but your team can really only have that identity when your jungler is pushing that identity, because the general way that like the maps work is that you have the 3 lanes, and every single lane will have a natural dynamic to it of like who has priority in the lane, who is pushing at any given moment, and it's up to the junglers to know the timers that the waves are being pushed, to tell the laners how fast to push their wave if they have the onus to push the wave on themselves, and then to like call for the dive and execute it. Now, like obviously, if the bot lane is like, if they know that they're going to be able to triple stack a wave and shove it under turret, then like the bot lane can call the jungler over, or the jungler can like look at the map and then call for the, like anybody can call for the dive. So I'm not saying that like Shun is like the BLG super mega wizard mastermind or anything. Like that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that it takes a certain type of jungler to have the confidence to go for the amount of dives and early aggressive plays that Shun goes for that can turn a team's identity into an early game team. Like it mostly stems from what the jungler is doing. And like Shun plays super aggressively early. He's always like looking for like for invade timers and dive angles and like all that kind of stuff. And I just think that like he is um, the main reason why the team looks as clean early as it does. Like him and Elk pretty much are like the two driving points of force for that. Canyon, I also have an S tier. Honestly, the reason why I have Shun first is less because of Shun and more because of Canyon. Because like the thing, like Canyon definitely looks better this year so far than he did last year. I think that 2023 was one of Canyon's weakest years ever. 2020 he was the best jungler in the world. 2021 he was up there. 2022 he was the best jungler in the world again. Something happened in 2023. The guy just like got way less consistent. He just kind of like he was still really good. He still his ceiling was still like the highest in the world. I guess I should also say that is that I think that Canyon is top two in the world right now for highest ceiling. The other one being Milky Way. Um, and Canyon is also uh, above Milky Way in terms of how creative he is with the map. Like the reason why Canyon is an S tier is because I know that he has the ceiling to be there. Um, I refuse to talk about the Kazakhs game because so many people have already talked about the Kazakhs game. I'm not the Kazakhs game doesn't exist to me. I need to talk about my own stuff. All right, so but yeah, for anybody who doesn't know, Canyon like had a really good Kazakhs game. He just kind of slammed it because he thought it was a good spot for it and performed, and like that definitely has a certain level of like badassery to it. But like Kenyon's always been the type of guy to also look for whatever's best in slot. So like what I was saying with Bwipo, where like Bwipo doesn't care about who he's playing against. He just cares about what the champions in the game are, what all the dynamics are, and what can he pick that will win them the game in that moment. And Canyon has shown that. He played Fiddlesticks this year. He's been known to pick Kane in the past when he thought that it was a really good Kane game. Like Canyon can pretty much just play any champion that he wants, and he can play them all to a super high degree, and he'll always pick whatever he thinks is best for the game. A lot like one of the problems that you can have with carry junglers sometimes is that they're really good at carries, and then that's like all they can play. Like for example, an example in LPL would be Leon, who is really good at carry junglers and can't play other junglers for shit, in my opinion. So their team is like kind of forced into picking carry junglers, or like honestly you can just use IG as a whole because IG's other jungler is also like that. Like Tianzhen is good at Rengar and he's good at Rel, and Rel is no longer in the meta, which means that he's only good at Rengar and he doesn't play anything else. Like if you put Tianzhen on anything that's not Rengar now, he's just gonna suck. And it's like that could be a problem that a lot of carry junglers run into is that they just don't know how to play facilitating junglers nearly as well. Canyon is not like that. Canyon is really good at playing facilitating junglers like Sejuani, Maokai, like Vi. He's really good at all of them, so that's definitely a big plus for Canyon. The only reason why I have him below Shun is because I'm not completely sold that Canyon is back to the same level of consistency that he had from 2020 to 2022. I still feel like a little bit uneasy when I watch him, as if I'm still watching 2023 Canyon. I don't know if Canyon's lanes weren't as stable as they are, if he would be looking as good as he is. Because, again, the meta is very bot side focused. It's very much who has the better bot 2v2, who has shove in the bot lane. So junglers are all pathing bot. And when your laners are Keen and Chovy, you don't have to worry about what your top side is doing. Like you know those lanes are going to be fine. So it's like Canyon only has so much room to like actually make mistakes. But I still just don't feel as confident in his game as I used to. Who do you think has the better champ pool, Shun or Ken? Definitely Canyon, 100%. Not even close. Shun like has creative picks. Like he's good at Jarvan and Kindred, which are two champions that are not necessarily in the meta right now, but that he can kind of pick whenever and perform on. But he doesn't have a champion ocean. He doesn't have a champion pool of 30 champions that he can pull out at any given moment and perform on. Shun probably has like 10. He probably has whatever the meta tank junglers are at the time, and then add Nidalee, Kindred, Jarvan to that pool, and that's his champion pool. There's one more that he plays that's just slipping my mind right now. But yeah, his pool will never be bigger than like 5 pocket picks plus the meta. Whereas Canyon's got like Canyon's always thinking about every single jungler in the game and like what will work. So okay, owner and A tier. So owner is sole A tier. Nobody else is there with him. I think that owner's big issue that's keeping me. Oh my god, I can't talk. Owner's big issue that's keeping him out of S tier is a champion pool issue for me. I feel like owner's trademark for me has always been Lee Sin and Rel. Rel's not in the meta anymore. For those who don't know, Rel got her jungle damage monster modifiers like completely removed. She does no bonus monster damage anymore. So in terms of who that hits the hardest, it's pretty much just owner. Like all of the other junglers in this tournament played like more picks than Rel or like didn't favor Rel, but like owner was a super heavily dependent on Rel. So that kind of brings this champion pool down to like Lee Sin plus meta champions, and that's it. And if that's your entire champion pool, I feel like you could be a liability to the team. And like in the past, owner has been the worst player on the team when he only had like there have been other situations where owner only has Lee Sin plus meta, and he has struggled in those situations before in the past. And I feel like he's kind of in a similar spot now. So I'll be interested to see what he pulls out. I feel like he's gonna end up turning into a Lee Sin merchant. That's like I feel like he's just gonna be a Lee Sin one trick, plus like maybe like Vi or Xin Zhao or something, and that's gonna be it. But I still think owner's really good. I still think owner has some of the best mechanics in the world, like out of junglers. I think this is actually like a really strong mechanic jungle pool. Now that I'm looking at it across the board, like the only two junglers on this list that don't have amazing mechanics are Levi and Croc, and that's it. Every other jungler on this list has pretty solid mechanics. Junjia. Junjia is an elite level jungler. I've said it before. I still believe it. I believe that if Junjia went to a Western region, he would be top 3. I think if Junjia went to an Eastern region, he would be top half. Like that's my opinion of the guy. I think he's that good. And he's proven it before. He used to play in the LPL. He never played on a main roster, but he used to play on EDG behind JJ. And there was a series in playoffs where he got subbed in for 2 games, played really well in both of those games, like against the best like Chinese players in the world at that time. So like the guy can perform when all of the players around him are good, and he's also performing when all of the players around him are not as good. There is like that really funny clip of him from MSI last year where his top laner is being solo killed level 1 in front of his buff, and he just kept on doing his buff, like he completely ignored it. And like a lot of people were clowning on him for that, but like honestly, like he's playing Vi, he only has W. Like the mindset is definitely I'm gonna get to level 2 before I help out with this 1v1, because like they were against an Olaf, I believe. I think it was Cassante versus Olaf level 1, and he was playing Vi. Like man, level 1 Vi with W start is not helping. Like it's not. He has no way to proc his passive shield if he only has W. So like the only way that he actually helps in that engage is if he auto attacks 3 times to get like the armored shred. That's it. Like so I don't actually blame him at all for just continuing to do his camp. If anything, I think Ozzy should have turned around and started leashing the camp for him and kiting around the camp so that they can finish the camp faster, smite it, get level 2, and then win the 2v1. Like so I don't actually think that was Junjia's fault. And other than that, he pretty much has no stains on him internationally. Like he's still just the best minor region jungler. He's proven that he can compete with major region junglers. So I see no reason to move him any lower than B tier. Regardless of where you have him in B tier, I think that there's no reason to put this guy any lower than B. If somebody, I'm not going to die on this hill, but if somebody put him in at the bottom of A tier, I would probably be like, that's weird. Anyways, and then just move on. I don't think it's like some crazy, like super troll thing. I think you could definitely watch Junjia's games and find justifications to like put him up there if you really wanted to. Okay, Tien. Tien has the same problem as Oscarinin, where he is just not at the top of his role in his region, and he's just kind of coming in anyway. Like if we go through the junglers in LPL, like there was that top 3 I was talking about earlier of Shun, Kanavi, Milky Way. Um, I think this year Tien got outperformed by a number of other junglers. You could put Aki in that conversation. You could say Leian. Definitely not Wei Wei. Wei Wei had a bad split. But yeah, Tien's like not. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that Tien's like not top five junglers in LPL this split. I still don't think Tien's going to be garbage. For example, in what year was it? It was like 2021 and 2022. Tien was like 2022 spring. Like Tien was like the best jungler in LPL like for that duration. So like he definitely still can be at a top level. He just like hasn't really shown it. Like Tien's biggest issue I think is that he's like from me watching the games, my viewpoint is that Tien is like very close-minded. He's not very creative, and when things don't go the way that he thinks they should go or that he wants them to go, he doesn't know what to do. So like one of the biggest examples was that in um, finals, there was a situation where he was trying to clear his bot side camps and he just didn't have numbers, and there was no way he was going to have numbers because his bot lane was shoved under turret, and like the other bot lane is missing off the map and they already got their reset off. Like it was the type of situation where the lane had shoved, they had reset, like the enemy lane, BLG's lane had shoved the wave, reset, then his bot lane shoved the wave back and reset to match tempo. Then the enemy bot lane shoved the wave again, so they already took the reset, they're not going to reset again. They shoved the wave again and then disappeared off the map. And you're sitting there and you're like, okay, the only possible thing that could be happening right now is that these guys are invading you. Like the three people are coming in and they're like infesting your bot side jungle. And Tien was just there and he was like, you know what? I'm gonna go for my red buff anyway. And then he went to his red buff and he got killed. It's like, how can, like, to me, that feels like Tien decided that he wanted to clear his bot side jungle and there was nothing that was going to stop him from attempting to clear his bot side jungle. So like that screams to me like not flexible. But that being said, I still think Tien is better than all of the Western junglers at this tournament because Tien has proven that he can be at the top of LPL domestically in his role at times. So that's my whole justification for that. Razork is here is because he was the best performing jungler at LEC. Fnatic has a middling top laner, a middling ADC, a mid laner who only performs when he feels like performing and was honestly middling this split too. So Fnatic is pretty much a two horse unit. They have Razork and they have Jun, and that's their entire team pretty much. Everybody else is just kind of role playing. So when you're in a team environment like that and you're still outperforming all the other junglers in your region, that's really impressive. And historically, this is not the first time Razork has done this either, because he did the exact same thing on Misfits, where he took their team to like, it was like a tied first place regular season finish. That team it was Hirit, who doesn't even play anymore, VTO, who was having like the best split of his life, and the bot lane was Kabe, who doesn't play anymore in a major region, and Vander, who doesn't play anymore in a major region. So Razork pretty much took VTO and a bunch of players who were pretty close to being kicked out of major regions, and he took them all the way to a first place like regular season finish. Like that's impressive. So now this is like multiple splits that he's taken teams that have no right being second place and dragging them up to second place. So I like Razork a lot. Inspired I've got because Inspired underperformed a bit in finals. I feel like we've already, like most people have already talked about it. Like we all accept it. He underperformed in finals. It's whatever. He's still the best jungler in North America. He was the best jungler in Europe when he played on Rogue. So like he was the best jungler in North America last year. So you can't really say too much bad about the guy. He also has a very creative champion pool. He's kind of like Western Canyon Jr. in that sense. Very creative champion pool. Not much else to say about Inspired. I don't think the one final series defines how good he is. I don't think he deserves to be put in C tier because of that. So there you go, right next to Razork. Okay, Yike. Last year I was much higher on Yike, mainly because he looked really good in like before MSI. He got to MSI, was extremely creative at MSI. In my opinion, in the series against Gen G, where G2 got 3-1'd, I thought that Yike was better than Peanut for the entirety of the series. When G2 played against BLG and got 3-1'd, I thought that Yike was playing on par with Shun. So that MSI 2023 gave me a really high opinion of Yike. Probably too high, honestly. Like by the time that we got to Worlds, Yike was not performing on the same level. And I think where that's kind of left me is that I now understand better where Yike's limits are. I understand him more as a player because he's not. It's not like he's not new anymore, and I feel like I overestimated him. Is what I'll say. I think I thought he had a higher ceiling than he did. I think he's kind of settled in now and is kind of playing more of a role player-ish role on G2. Um, Now, part of that might be that he doesn't need to play as crazy as he did because, in all fairness, Caps was not playing very well last year. So maybe it was the type of situation where Yike was like, okay, I need to step up and perform because Caps is not performing. And then now we get to this year, and Caps is like back on top of the region, and so Yike is like, okay, I can take a step back and let Caps do his thing, and I can play Rel, and I can play Maokai, and then just chill. So maybe that's what it is. But I feel like Yike has not brought the same firepower to me this season as he did last season. And I also think that Razor just like straight up outperformed him. I think that's like not up for too much debate. Okay, Umpty. I also have Umpty in B tier. This is why like B tier is like so flooded. Umpty's like kind of in the same situation as Junjia, except like worse, where he has proven that he can survive in eastern regions. He's not matching the LCK junglers, but he's like surviving in the LCK. And he moved over to LCS and he looks pretty good. Like pretty much just like generic kind of okay import turns into like top level LCS player. That's pretty much what Umpty is. I feel like Umpty kind of embodies the essence of the problem of LCK League of Legends that occurred during the like 2018 to 2020 era where it felt like the LCK was like falling off and the LPL was better, and it was that the LCK plays too slow and they play like too inflexible, and I feel like Umpty like embodies that really well, where like he has good mechanics, he's like very good at like holding things together and like dragging the game out longer, but I feel like he plays too slow and not flexible enough. I think he is like a slightly more consistent but lower ceiling version of Tien. And he has also shown me less results in major regions, like less successful results in major regions than Junja has. So that just kind of puts him there. I also think he's in a similar boat to Yike, where it's like Razork just kind of outperformed Yike the split. I think Inspire just outperformed Umpty the split, so Umpty just by default gets moved to the back of B tier. But I still think Umpty's good. I still think he's got solid mechanics. I think he's good at stabilizing maps. So, okay, C tier we have Levi. Levi's read on the meta is kind of like really weird because he still plays Nocturne occasionally, but he has like an obsession with Wukong. He was really good with Wukong when it was meta, and then when Wukong got nerfed, he just kept playing it. And then Wukong got a few buffs, so he's just still playing it, and it's like still like his most played champion. So I feel like his like meta read is kind of weird. I also think that his mechanics are like not good anymore. Like Levi definitely had good mechanics at a time. 2017, 2018, his mechanics were very good, but now he's just kind of like a play for the team kind of guy now. Not as explosive, not as creative as he used to be. Still an interesting champion pool at times. Like I said, he played like Wukong and Nocturne, but not very many other people are doing that. He also has a good Karthus. He hasn't playing it. I don't think he's gonna play it, but that's something to note is that maybe he'll pull it out. But Yeah, I think Levi has definitely already hit his peak and has been on the decline for a bit. Still performs well in the VCS. Uh, Sucks that Bean J was part of the match fixing scandal because Bean J was like the VCS jungler that I thought was going to end up surpassing Levi. But yeah, no, at this point, Levi's still the best jungler domestically, probably. Jose Dioto. I think, again, this is the same thing as Shun, where I'm going to talk about the issues, or like I'm going to talk about the team's playstyle. Uh, so I need to preface again, I don't think that the jungler single handedly determines what the team's playstyle is. I just think that the jungler is one of the more influential roles in deciding what a team looks like. And my big problem with Astral is that it feels like their team really struggles around objective setups. I feel like they never know when they're supposed to actually start an objective, like when they have the priority to do it. Because one of Astral's like biggest habits, even in their first series against like Leviathan Esports or whatever they're called, where like they're supposed to be like the heavily favored team, they were still struggling to start objectives properly. Like they would shove out their waves, they would rotate people over, they would start an objective, and then the enemy team would shove the waves back, show up to the objective, and then Astral was like, "Oh shit, we didn't have enough time yet. Like we weren't actually supposed to start this." And it's like, if you have that problem consistently, if you're always losing objectives to teams that are worse than you, it's probably the jungler's fault. Like I don't want to throw all the blame on Jose because again I don't like to say that the jungler dictates the playstyle of the team, but it's like at a certain point you have to point a finger and be like, okay, somebody on this team doesn't know when you're supposed to start objectives. It's more likely than not going to be the jungler. So I'm just going to go ahead and say that my current opinion of Jose is that he doesn't actually know how to use his laner's priorities properly, or like he doesn't know how to use laner priority and like who has shove and where he's supposed to be on the map and when he's supposed to start objectives. So that's why I have Jose in D. The reason why I don't have Jose in F is because I think he actually has pretty good mechanics. I think the entirety of Astral, this split, had pretty good mechanics overall. So I would say like Jose is single-handedly being saved by his micro and his hands. Jose is pretty good at Lee Sin. I would like to see him play Lee Sin in this tournament. I want to see him have like one game where he just like rolls over the other team early game because he just gets ahead. I think that's the type of thing that Astral's really good at, is that they're really good at like pushing the gas when they're ahead. Okay, and then in last place I have Croc. I love Croc as a person. I think he's a really funny guy. I think he's really nice. I love how like enthusiastic he is about Brazilian culture and like the culture of the CB lol. That being said, this guy does not have hands. Like he just I have never seen somebody miss so many Sejuani ults like in a row. Like it is like almost a war crime how bad he is at landing skill shots, actually. Like I'm sorry. It's just listen, I gave Croc a few years, okay? I was like, maybe this guy will turn it around eventually. He still just cannot land skill shots. And I don't think he does like anything special in the jungle. Like I can't point to what his strength would be. Like he has a decent Lee Sin, but if he's not playing that, he's just playing tank junglers to like a mediocre degree, and that's it. I just like don't really have much else to say at this point. I still think Croc is one of the better junglers in CB LoL, but I think that jungle is one of the weaker positions in CB LoL, so I can't use that as a reason anymore. Um, I don't think Croc is an F tier, just because I know he's one of the better junglers in CB LoL. So I feel like you could take like the worst junglers in VCS and LJL, LLA, and put those guys in F tier. But it's just until I see something from Croc internationally, I'm just not going to defend him anymore. Like he's just last place. Bam, mid lane. Some of the stuff is pretty obvious, and I shouldn't have to go into it. Jovi, everybody's been talking about it. He looks so good this split. He just looks like the best mid laner in the world. Done deal. Knight also S tier. Some people have Knight in A tier. The reason why I think they're wrong is because I think overall the community just has really bad recency bias. I feel like if somebody underperforms in a finals match, people tend to completely forget what they did for the entire rest of the year. And the thing with Knight is that he was not playing champions that he's good at playing in finals. So if you only remember finals or if you only watch finals, you're going to look at Knight and you're going to be like, wow, this guy's Azir is like okay and his Aurelion Sol is terrible. And that's going to be like your entire opinion of the guy. Um, those are not the champions that Knight actually plays. Like Knight is much better on champions like Ari, for example. He has the best Ari in the world, in my opinion. And I think like overall, on like all of the other control mages, like on Talia and stuff, he looks really really good. He was the best performing mid laner in LPL this split. I think he was just kind of put in a weird spot in finals because both Knight and Cream have such high priority on Ari that like both teams were just kind of perma banning it, and they never got to play it. Yeah, I think Knight is an elite level mid laner. I just think that he was not on the champions that he wanted to be on in finals. I don't even want to say that he underperformed because I feel like it was like more of like an active team decision to be like, hey, let's see what happens if we put Knight on these champions. Like it felt more like they were trying it out than that Knight like actually choked or something. So my opinion of Knight has not moved down at all. Uh, okay, Faker in A tier. I think we've also gotten to the point where Faker is not going to get any better mechanically from where he is now. He's still obviously insane. We know he has a lot of influence over his team's mental and like their decision making skills. So you can value that highly, but I don't think he's at a point where he's outplaying other top level mid laners on a mechanical level anymore. So for me, Faker's like kind of unless Faker does like something insane during a split, he's kind of gate kept at top of A tier for the entire rest of his career at this point. Cream is I think Cream also encapsulates another problem with the League of Legends community. So the first one being that League is like way too heavy on recency bias, and the other one is that people are way too low on players whose names they don't recognize. Because I've been seeing a lot of Cream slander, and I'm like so confident that the only reason why he's getting disrespected like this is because people just don't know who he is. So Cream has shown to me this split that he is a lot more complete of a player than he was in the past. And I was even super high on Cream before. So Cream before was like um, a melee assassin specialist. He played Silas, Akali, Yone, pretty much. That was like his entire champion. He also played Kiana. So like all of these like super aggressive melee champions. And that was like his entire identity when he played on OMG. The entire OMG roster kind of got blown up. Like Shanji and Aki moved to NIP. Cream got moved to Top Esports. And since he has been put on Top Esports, the only melee champion he's played is Akali, and all of the other champions that he's been playing are all control mages. And when he was on OMG, the only control mages he could play, or honestly the only mages he could play, were Victor and Corki, and that was it. In this split, he has shown that he can still play Corki, that he can play Ari, that he's pretty much like just good on all of the meta mages, like Talia also. So to me, Cream no longer has a champion pool issue. And I also believe that Cream is a very talented mechanical player who has not reached his peak yet. So I have a lot of respect for the guy. I think he is definitely an A tier mid laner. I definitely think he's better than all of the Western mid laners. So that's my piece on Cream. I think that if you haven't heard of the player, you need to give him a chance because he's going to be like really good. He's already really good, but like he has potential to be insane. Caps is also an A tier because I think that this is the best Caps has looked in like 3 years. Uh, Obviously, in 2019 and 2020, he was like one of the best mid laners in the world, if not the best. So he's definitely not there. He's definitely not the best mid laner in the world or anything. But he has definitely stepped up this split from last year, and I'm really happy for him because listening to his post game interviews last year were always so depressing because you would watch the game and Caps would not look very good, and he would get carried by his team, and then you would listen to the post game interview and Caps would be like, super depressed, and he'd be like, "Yeah, man, I played like shit today. Like I'll play better next time." And it's like every game was like that. It was just he was always so disappointed with himself. And there was also like a stint where he just like played the shit out of solo queue, and a lot of people were like noticing it. So like my impression of the situation is that Caps was underperforming, and he worked really fucking hard to push himself back to the top, and it worked. And now he's the best top laner in LEC again. So like crazy respect to Caps. I think Caps has a really good champion pool. He plays everything, including like he. I think that Caps is the reason why Hui what got as popular as it was. Nobody was playing Hui before Caps picked it. Caps picks it in like 2 games in the same week or something like that. Like goes crazy in both of them. It's like 10-0 and some shit. And now all of a sudden everybody's playing it. I think that like overall that's just a thing that G2 does. Like nobody was playing Zac until Broken Blade. Nobody was playing Hui until Caps. Yeah, I just think Caps has like really been performing better. I think he is a clear step above all of the other Western mid laners in the world right now. Okay, I have Humanoid in B. I think it would be perfectly acceptable to move Humanoid down to top of C. I think that's fine also. Um, Humanoid has definitely not performed up to standard this split at all. He does not look nearly as good as he did in those international tournaments that he played in like 2022 and 2021 or whatever. But you know, I feel like it's one of those things where it's like everybody knows that he still has it in there, that he can just become this insane player, like with the snap of a finger. I have yet to see it at all this year, like just being completely transparent. I have yet to see a game where Humanoid looks as good as he used to. Not a single one. But it also just feels weird putting Humanoid in C tier because I feel like he still does have it in him to just like be on the same like he has it in him to just play at A tier. And I'm a little bit more skeptical. I'm starting to wonder if maybe he doesn't have it anymore. Because we were all saying the same thing about him last year and it never happened. But I don't know. I feel like it's not Humanoid's time to be put in C tier. If he underperforms at this international and then underperforms the entirety of summer and then makes it to Worlds, maybe he goes in C tier. We'll see. All right, C tier. The elephant in the room. I have Maple over Jensen. It's pretty simple. When Maple played in LCS, I thought he was better than Jensen, and I think Jensen has not played that great for the past few years. I think he like looked okay on Dignitas, but I think he was really underwhelming on Cloud9. I feel like Jensen should not be on a top LCS team anymore. Whereas like on the flip side, I feel like I think that Jensen's kind of run his course. I think he is not going to get back to where he was ever again. Whereas when I watch Maple play, I still see flashes of mechanical brilliance from Maple. Like when Jace was in the meta last year, he was like popping off on Jace. This year he has been like really looking good on some of the like flashier champions like Ahri. Man, calling Ahri a flashy champion is weird. I feel like a lot of people would disagree with that. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like Maple is a much more explosive player than Jensen is. Jensen has kind of gotten to a point in his career where he's just kind of stable and slow. And that might be why I have like a bit of a lower opinion than him. I don't think that like stable and slow players are. I don't think that's like a bad thing or anything. Like obviously I have Keen and 369 at the top of my top lane tier list, but I just don't find myself believing that Jensen will make very many like impressive like or proactive plays anymore. I feel like he's just kind of playing to neutralize and is playing backseat to what Bo and Inspired are doing. Whereas Maple will actively be pushing his team forward. And I thought that when he played on TSM that it was the same thing. That like he was the person who was like at least trying to make something happen for the team, even if that team was not very good as a whole. Okay, Tennyson. I think Tennyson has actually improved from this year from last year, which is really impressive because Tennyson has been playing for a long time, like 2014 or something like that. So it's very rare that you'll see players like step up and evolve their game when they're that late into their career. But the big thing that Tennyson has added is that I feel like he's gotten better at roaming, which is like that was like his thing before. Like he used to play like Lissandra, and then he would like roam to a side lane and like dive and stuff. I feel like he's better at it. He's been very like heavily prioritizing Talia. And every time he gets his hands on that champion, like stuff just happens. Like he plays the champion really well in my opinion for the most part. Very proactive type of player. Mechanically, I also think he's solid. I actually don't know why. I think I have him below Jensen like purely out of like respect for Jensen because Jensen's like a very like experienced player. I mean, obviously Tinones is experienced too, but like Tinones is not experienced on the same level that Jensen is. He hasn't played against that caliber of player. It's also fair to be a little bit skeptical of minor region players as a whole because you never know like how their competition stacks up. Like that's the difference, I guess, with Maple is that like some of the players that he was playing against are like he was like PSG 3-0'd CFO and CFO had Rest, Karsa, Gory, Sword Art. Like those are big names and like big players. And like Maple is still holding his own and like outperforming them. And Tinones doesn't have to outperform anyone. Like he has to outperform like Dean Kato. No disrespect to Dean Kato. I think Dean Kato is also a good mid laner. I would probably have Dean Kato at like bottom of C tier, but there's just not the same level of competition. Um, and I have yet to see Tinones kind of like break through any of the other mid laners like at internationals. I would say that Tinones like most impressive international feat within the last 2 years. Uh, obviously, he has a much bigger feat from way back when. In the last 2 years, I think Tinone's most impressive feat internationally has been gapping Arya, who is a mid laner in the LJL, who played for a bit, like a very short stint in the LCK. But apart from that, I have not seen Tinone's like actually uh, show that he's like more capable than anybody higher than that caliber. Okay, APA. A lot of people have APA in D tier. I don't think APA is D tier because he has fixed his champion pool issue in the sense that he used to only have 3 champions, which was what was it? It was Ziggs, Ari, and Aurelion Sol. And then so at some point people were just like, okay, let's ban those, and then now he's screwed. APA added Talia to his champion pool and it looks good. So now he has 4 champions, so you can't actually ban him out on the first rotation. And past that, I also know that APA has a very good Cassiopeia because he's always spamming Cassiopeia and solo queue like perma. Like he's always climbing like very high on the NI ladder, and every time he goes to boot camp, he climbs pretty high on the ladder in the other regions, and every time he does it, he's always one tricking Cassiopeia. So like clearly, it's like his most comfortable champion. It's just Cassio is like not in the meta right now. But should Cassio ever be in the meta, APA will be able to just pick it up just like that, like snap of a finger. He can just play it. Like he has 5 champions that he can play. Essentially, is what I'm trying to say. Like he no longer has only 3 champions. Like he now has 5 that he can play. So, champion pool issue not going to be as big of a deal as some people are making it out to be. I don't think. Apart from that, there's not much else to say. I think that he definitely stepped up in playoffs, played better than all the other mid laners in his lower bracket run, outperformed JoJo, outperformed Jensen, did not outperform Dove in my opinion. I think that Dove is better, but like Dignitas is worse, so unlucky I guess. But but like APA is definitely he definitely played better in playoffs than he did in regular season, and I think that adding Talia to his champion pool will really help that issue. So I think that APA is good enough to be in C tier. The other surprise is that I think that Cody's good enough to be in C tier. Cody is mechanically the best player on Astral. He can look really clean. Like from this is not Cody's first time in an international. He's been to plenty of international tournaments because he's always been one of the best mid laners in LLA. And the main issue that I've always seen from Cody in LLA is that he or not in LLA, but like the main issue I see from Cody internationally is that he can never like actually match people in lane. Like he's a weaker laner. But I think that Cody is like a very strong mid game player. I think he's really good at moving around the map and like finding picks. One of Astral's biggest strengths is that they are very fast on engages. Like if somebody decides to do something, the entire team is really fast at recognizing what is happening and like fully committing to it. Like the one play that comes to mind, for example, is that there was a mid gank and Jose was like camping in a bush, and their support was also there. And like Jose went for the play, he landed the Sejuani ult, and the instant the Sejuani ult landed, there was like the support was there, the mid laner was there, everybody was like flashing on the target, they got the kill, like the gank was successful. That's just what Astral does. They're very fast to make decisions once the go button is triggered. Now, their biggest problem is actually like pressing the go button at the right time, but you know when they do, it's very fast. Like I'm actually going to show something. All right, here it is. They're going to push bot with the bit. Okay, yeah, just going to point it out. Cody is 8-0. It's just kind of his thing. He's just better mechanically than everybody. Okay, watch this. Watch this sequence. Watch how fast the game just ends. Like there are not many teams who will move that fast once they have an advantage. Like those guys, they were like, we're going to ace them under this tier 2 turret and end the game. And then the instant that one person went, which in this case it was Zothve finding a really good Q3 on Aatrox, the entire team just sent it and they all went for it and it worked. And that's like Astral's biggest strength is that they're really good at just sending it. And I think that you can only be good at sending situations like that if all of your players are like mechanically adept, which is kind of proof to me that like the players on that team at least have good mechanics. And Cody has proven to me that he has good mechanics over the course of multiple years, so that's why I have him in C tier. Also, I just want to point it out, I don't think it's going to happen because Zoe is not in the meta right now. If Zoe somehow does manage to make its way into the meta, Cody is insanely good at Zoe. I'm just gonna say that. I think Cody is like mechanically like a top 5 Zoe, like in this tournament. Like actually, unironically, like I genuinely believe that. So who knows? Maybe he'll just pick it. But yeah, that's just a random side note that doesn't actually matter. Okay, and D tier I have Emo. Emo was subbed in mid lane. He's not actually the mid laner for Gam. He was subbed in after the match fixing scandal because Gam got 2 of their players temporarily suspended. Their mid laner and their ADC both got suspended. Emo is 18 years old. He just qualified for VCS. Like he just played on a team that like played through their like relegation series or whatever to like make it into the VCS. I don't know if it's still called a relegation or not, like relegation / promotion. But like he just got into the VCS because he's really young. So in terms of experience, he obviously doesn't have any. He's never played in the VCS before. He's never played internationally before. That said, from watching the games, I actually think that he's like kind of impressive. I think he's got a bright future ahead of him. I would not be surprised if he flourishes in the VCS in the coming few seasons. I just think it's like too soon. He shows some flashes of being talented mechanically, but not very much in terms of like good decision making. That I mean that's pretty much what you can expect from like a young rookie who just made it into a region, right? So Emo's in D tier because he's very like green, but he's not F tier because I think he actually shows pretty decent mechanics. Not much else to say about Emo. This is the ADC list. Take it in. You'll notice this is the only list that I have that actually has an F tier player on it. We'll get to Easy Love later, but let's start it off with the obvious. Elk, best ADC in the world right now. Insane player. Just absolutely crazy. Can play like pretty much every single ADC that's actually good right now. Elk and On make up the best bot lane duo in the world. BLG's early aggression, most of it is through Elk because it's a bot side meta. So like BLG, it's Shun, Elk, and On. Those 3, those are the ones who are always going for the dives. They're always going for the early plays. So you can expect to see Elk on top of a lot of action. Elk's big trademark is that he plays like extremely aggressively. Like we're talking like robo levels of aggression here. Like that's like Elk is like he's ascended past the point of coin flipping, and he's gotten to skill checking. Like he's not coin flipping the situation because he knows exactly how the situation is supposed to play out if he plays perfectly, and he's always testing himself to play perfectly like that. So he's always going for the aggressive plays with the confidence that he will execute them how he's supposed to execute them. Like he's very good at considering what cooldowns the enemy has. Like who has flashes up, who has their ultimate up. Can I play like this? What do I have? What are my tools? And he'll sit there and he'll go, okay, I can play aggressively if and only if I can flash the Azir ult. And he'll sit there like balls out, full confidence, and he'll just do it. And he'll just go for it. And either he flashes the Azir ult and he doesn't, and most of the time, because he's the best mechanical bot lane in the world right now, he does get the flash off, and then his team gets an advantage. So it's like watching Elk play is like really beautiful when everything is going the way that he wants it to. And honestly, it most of the time it does. So yeah, just a really pretty player to watch. Jackie Love, I also have an S tier. I think Jackie Love and Mako really stepped it up this year as a bot lane duo. They were definitely top two with Elk and On. Nobody else in LPL was anywhere close to them. I mean, there's not much else to say. I think it's just a situation where when it's a bot centric meta where the junglers are always going bot and always pathing bot, it's the more aggressive ADCs who are awarded, who like reap the rewards because they can afford to make more mistakes because they have the safety cushion of their jungler being on that side of the map. I just think the meta is good for them. Guma's an A tier. Guma definitely outperformed Pays the entirety of the year. I don't think Guma was better than Viper, but Viper's not at this tournament. So Guma's like holding that like sole A tier spot. I think you could easily make an argument to put Pays here. That's perfectly fine. If people have Pays in A tier, I'm okay with that. If people have Guma in S tier and Pays in A tier, I'm also okay with that. Me personally, I don't think Guma's on the same level as Elk and Jackie right now. I don't know. I really don't have that much to say. There's not very much to talk about with ADCs because, for the most part, what determines how good an ADC is just like how good are they at team fights and how strong are their mechanics, and that's it. I guess I can like talk about why I have Pays in like an entirely separate tier from Guma. Again, this is kind of like beating a dead horse. Like everybody's been saying it. Pays' weakness is its laning phase. Anytime Genji loses, it's always through bot. So, and especially when you compare it with the competition, like the three bot duos that the Eastern teams are sending are Elk and On, Jackie Love and Mako, and Gumayusi and Kerio. And you just look at Genji's ADC and you're like, I don't know. I have no faith in Pays that he'll actually like be able to survive any of those. And even like when you look at some of the Western bot laners, like Han Sama loves aggressive picks like Draven and Kalista. So it's like I don't even know like how Pays is gonna do against G2's bot lane if they ever play. But Pays is laning for me, moves him down to B tier. Again, if you have him in A tier, that's fine. Let's see. KT Elite 20599. Is Jackie consistent? Hell no. No. Jackie Love has a nickname, and that's Jackie Int. but that's like the same reason why. That's like what I was talking about with Jackie Love and Elk, where it's like when you're an aggressive ADC who goes for a lot of those aggressive plays, it really helps out when it's a bot side meta because junglers are always pathing bot. So you go for those plays, you mess it up, and your jungler's there to bail you out. So I think that's partly the reason why Jackie Love has been more consistent, like this split. But yeah, no, Jackie Love definitely has a reputation of being not consistent at all. So who knows? We might see him run it down. But I think the meta's really favorable for him right now, and he hasn't been running it down this split specifically. Okay, Hansama also in B tier. To me, Hansama has about like the same kind of laning that Pays does. For G2, it works out a little bit better because they're obviously against not as good competition. But I feel like Hans definitely can struggle in laning phase at times. Now, he does play a lot of like super aggressive bot laners though. And we saw it at MSI and Worlds that Hans is not afraid to pick aggressive bot laners against the best bot duos in the world. So I'll be excited to see that. But for me, it's always kind of like every time I watch Hans Sama like play those kinds of bot lanes, it always feels like very like on a nice edge that something could go wrong at any moment. So I just don't view like Hans as some kind of elite stalwart laner who will always win. Okay, C tier. Betty in C tier. Betty played in the LPL for a while and was never that good in LPL, but just the fact that you can exist in the LPL and not be kicked out immediately speaks for something. I think Betty's mechanics are pretty decent. So pretty much my conclusion on that front is that you put him in a Western region and he would be fine. So that's my take on Betty. There's not really much to say. Betty doesn't do anything flashy. He's not special in any way. He doesn't like have any crazy champions in his pool. He never pops off super hard like in team fights or in lane or anything. But he's going to be stable. He's going to be able to hold his own against most of the other players. So he gets C tier from me. In the same tier as Noah, I think Noah's ceiling is pretty high, but he has a how do I put this? I feel like this is partly narrative, and I don't like buy. I really try my hardest not to buy into narratives, but I kind of agree with this one that it feels like Noah does not take risks when he really needs to take risks. Like there's a lot of games where it just feels like he is not doing anything to help his team more than like the bare minimum. He plays very, very safe. And I feel like when you're just looking at this pool of ADCs, like playing safe is not an option. I feel like players who like to play safe end up getting punished super hard against aggressive players. Let's see, is Hypercarry style ADC not that good right now? From what I heard, that's Paze's playstyle. Yeah, so Paze, like, when he debuted, he was playing the best on champions like Zeri. Zeri was like the big champion that was out when he was a rookie, and he looked fine. Like honestly, it was actually really funny because in his opening, like the very first series that Paze ever played, if I'm remembering correctly, was against T1, and it was like a lot of people thought that Guma and Carry was the best bot lane at the time, and Paze like picked Zeri, and he like did super well in lane and then completely threw the game later. Like he was like 7-0 on Zeri or something, and he just like completely ran it down and lost and like I don't know, it was bad. And it's like it's really funny because now that's like kind of the opposite of what Paze does. It's like now he can't lane for shit, but he's like, I guess that's an exaggeration. If Paze was in a Western region, his laning would be like top level. He just can't lane against the best of the best. But like pretty much like it's kind of the exact opposite. Where now Paze is being called out that he can't lane with the best of the best, but people think that he's a lot more stable later. So it's just kind of funny to see how players can kind of flip like that. Like Viper's the same way. Like when you think of Viper now, you think of this player who's min-maxing everything and he's like the perfect player. But if you go back and you watch Griffin in 2019, it's so funny because every single time Viper gets ahead, the casters are always like, "Oh man, but it's Viper. Like he's so inconsistent. You have to like Viper's gonna throw the lead somehow." And it's like you can never picture Viper throwing a lead now. So it's just kind of cool that players can completely change their playstyle over the course of even just a couple of years. All right, D tier. We've got a lot of D tier ADCs. If you couldn't tell, my opinion on the ADC pool overall is pretty low compared to some of the other roles. Yon is here because he definitely outperformed Masu, but he has been one of the worst ADCs in LCS for a few splits now. And I don't think having a couple of good series in playoffs really changes that. Like if you're one of the worst ADCs like in your in your region and your team happens to carry you to MSI, like let's be honest, that's really what happened is that Impact and Umpty were doing the main like brunt of the heavy lifting for that team. I think Yon was just kind of a passenger princess, and Yon has shown that he cannot hold his own against even the top ADCs. Like for example, anytime that Yon goes against like Berserker This split was a little bit different because Berserker really underperformed this split. But like any other time that Yon goes against Berserker, it's just like utter domination. Like Yon gets destroyed. So my opinion of him is not very high. I feel like he's going to struggle. Route I have here because in any other normal season, I would have Route in C tier. I feel like Route has not looked as good this split. Like from the games that I've seen, I mean, I think the reasoning is literally just that Redbird is not Seos. Redbird is not as good as Seos. So Route is kind of not able to hold the lanes as well as he used to be able to. He's still the type of player where if he gets to late game, he'll be fine. He can perform in team fights, but getting there has been a little bit more of a struggle. Like I think it's just support diff, but like in a bad way. I feel like Seos made Route look better than he actually was. That's where I'm at. So I mean that just speaks to the level of talent that Seos has. For those who don't remember, I had Seos in B tier on my world tier list, and I still believe that Seos is that good. Okay, Masu. Masu's a rookie. It's been kind of rough. He's not very good at all of the matchups yet. He can't match any of the top level bot lane combos at all. He will kind of get rolled over and destroyed, I think. I don't think Masu will stay bad. I think he's got potential to be good in the future. It's just not his time yet. He can't even outperform Yon, so it's like not looking too great. I also think, as a whole, that the ADC pool in LCS specifically was not very good this year. Like, let me just put this into perspective. Okay, so Bvoy won first team. Now, a lot of people will say that Bvoy only won first team because Berserker underperformed, and that is 100% true. But regardless, Bvoy won first team, right? Bvoy was not even a top 5 ADC in CB LoL. Now, asterisk on that, ADC is CB LoL's best role. It always has been. CB LoL just has like a bunch of insane ADCs for no reason. But when Bvoy played in the CB LoL, Route, IU, Teton, Brance, and what was the other one? And Netuno. Those 5 were all better than Bvoy, in my opinion. So if the 6th best ADC in a minor region, even though that minor region is known for having good ADC players, if you're the 6th best ADC in a minor region and you move to the LCS and you're the best performing ADC in the LCS, then that has to speak for the overall level of ADCs in the LCS this year. Like they have it just, and like you look at the bot lanes and it's like in years prior, Yon was viewed as one of the worst ADCs in the league, and now he's on the championship team. So it's like I just feel like the ADCs in LCS are not that great. So Masu's competition isn't very good. He's a rookie. He's not very good at playing on most matchups, so he's just in D tier for me. Okay, Snaker is. I'll be honest. I was actually pretty impressed with Snaker when I watched Astral. I think like eye test alone, you could definitely move Snaker up to top of D tier. Of course, the big problem is that LLA's bot lanes aren't that great. They're not known for their bot lanes. They're known for having a lot of like random ass imports in top mid and jungle. Like that's LLA's specialty for the most part, is that they just have like some really good top mid jungle players, but they're not known for bot lane at all. So I have to judge Snaker with a grain of salt. In terms of pros, I think that Snaker has very good decision making. Snaker and Ackerman are very fast together. If they see a window to go for a favorable trade, they are very, very fast to act on it and punish you for it. That is like my main praise for them. The main issue is that I don't believe Snaker has any international experience. Some of the players on his team that do have international experience, so like Cody and Ackerman, for example, obviously Jose does too. None of those players like ever like stood out too crazily. I would say the only exception to that is that Jose kind of popped off in 2020 play-ins for Worlds. But other than that, LLA has never really proven that they can step it up internationally. So valuing like domestic dominance of your role in the LLA, especially when you're not topside, isn't super convincing for me. So I would not be surprised if Snaker outperforms everybody else in D tier, but I'm not going to put him there until I've seen it, pretty much. Okay, Easy Love. Why is Easy Love in F? So very simple. Easy Love was not Gam starting ADC. Gam starting ADC was one of the 32 players who was caught in the match fixing scandal, so he's been temporarily banned. Easy Love is the replacement. Before Easy Love replaced, I think his name was Paishiro, Easy Love played on the worst team in VCS, and in games that he played, because the VCS plays series, they don't play like best of ones, they play best of threes. In games that Easy Love played, he went 0-18 on the worst team in the VCS. And then I watched the games that Gam played in playoffs, and I watched like what Easy Love was doing, and the guy just, there's nothing that stands out about his gameplay. He's not good at laning. He's not good at team fighting. He's very prone to getting picked out. He doesn't like position well very often. So if you have a player that has no strengths, is actively throwing the games at times, and went 0-18 on a last place team in a minor region, that deserves F tier. Like, if you watch Gam's finals, Easy Love was against Shogun, which like is a big asterisk because Shogun is insanely talented. Could definitely play in a major region if he was ever offered a spot. So you can take that with a grain of salt. But Easy Love was getting like gapped the shit out of by Shogun. Like the entire series. Shogun was just better. There was a lot of like 2v2 kills, a lot of outplays. So my opinion of Easy Love is just very low at the moment. That's why I have him in F tier. And supports. All right, this is the last one. Supports, I've got On at the top. I think pretty much everybody has On at the top. He, paired with Elk and Shun, have made up the best like early game trio in the entire world. So On speaks for himself. I don't really need to say anything. He's really good at range champions. He's really good at engaged supports. So his champion pool is like very wide, very hard to punish. He doesn't make very many mistakes, and he has a really good eye for when to start team fights. That's pretty much all I really need to say. The surprising thing is that I have Mako in S tier with On. This is not an opinion that I've really seen from people, but I think that Mako and Jackie Love have like played their way into the top of the LPL like ADC bot duos. Why did I say ADC bot? LPL bot duos. Like Mako has definitely really stepped it up this split from other splits. When you looked at top esports roster initially, you were kind of thinking that they were going to be that like 4th, 5th place area. That's mainly because there were doubts around like, is TN going to perform? How will Cream look on a team that's not OMG? You know, Jackie Love's been like kind of underperforming for a while. Mako's kind of been underperforming for a while. You put all that together, you just don't really have that much faith in that roster. Jackie Love and Mako like really stepped it up. I'm telling you, these guys were crazy good for the entirety of the year. I think that Mako is like well deserving of being S. A tier, top of A tier is Lehens. Pays being bad at laning comparatively to the best bot duos in the world. Pays not being as good at laning. You can't solely blame Pays, because the role that decides which bot lane has priority is support. In that sense, I kind of have the same view that Pays and Lehens are kind of a package deal. Lehens is definitely not B tier though. Like Lehens historically has proven that he is very good. He can play at the top level like pretty much whenever. He has a champion ocean. He has creative champion picks. Like for example, Lehens was the person who invented the singed counterpick for Yumi. So you can always count on Lehens for like trying to think about what champions are best in slot. He has like some very good engage angles. I just feel like he's struggled a little bit in lane this year, so I've put him below On and Mako. Keria has also struggled this year. This is one of his weaker splits overall, even though he still looks really good. He's not the best support in the world anymore. He still has it in him, don't get me wrong, but I feel like his champion pool is like weird. Like he's been playing a lot of Nautilus, but he just does not look that good on Nautilus. Yeah, there's not much else to say. I feel like Keria is just kind of struggling with his champion pool. Now, one thing that I do think is a little bit weird about Keria is that there was a time when Keria was the best Thresh player in the world, and a lot of support players have started picking up Thresh again, and Keria just has not touched the champion, which I think is weird. I don't know if Keria just like completely forgot that he's like a Thresh god or what, but yeah, once he remembers that he's good at Thresh, I think he'll be insane again, you know. But until then, he just doesn't really have that many like great engage options in his champion pool right now. He hasn't looked that good at it, so that is why Keria is an A tier. Actually, wait, this is really funny. I'm looking at my support. I did not realize this before, but I have LPL supports in S, LCK supports in A, LEC supports in B, and LCS supports in C, and then all of the minor region supports in D. That's actually kind of hilarious. Mickey in B. There have been times when Mickey was an A tier support, like last split in summer. Like he was an A tier on my Worlds 2023 list. I think Mickey has looked much less consistent this split than before. I think the team as a whole like looks roughly the same with Caps performing better, but I feel like Mickey has been less consistent and has less room for creativity, which is like my main gripe with Mickey at the moment. I still think he's really good, obviously. I think he's the best support in LEC. But he's not convincing me that he's on the same level as the Eastern supports this time around. Because I feel like his main strength last time was that he had this crazy champion pool that was really hard to prepare for, and he could like pull off the champions to a high degree. Like for example, he would pick Lissandra support, and he was actually really good at it, and it was something that top level teams had to take into consideration. But he just doesn't have any of those champions anymore, and now he's like just playing standard. So I feel like there's just one less threat to consider when you're playing against him. Jun is also in B tier. Jun has pretty much, with Razork, the two of them have single-handedly pulled Fnatic to MSI. I've said that before. Uh, Overall, Jun is just very fundamentally a good support. The main reason why I have him gated in B is because we saw Jun play in LCK for a while, and we saw that he was not in that same elite level as Lehen's, Keria, and Delight. He was not up there. So we know for a fact that he would not be an A tier with those two. So just by default, I have him B tier with Mickey. C tier, I have Busio. I think Busio is better than Core JJ. Busio has been playing really well this split, in my opinion. I think it's his best split so far. He looked really good, especially on Karma. Although I don't know if we're going to see Karma anymore, but like he was definitely like the best Karma support player. He's pretty good at range supports overall, so I think that like when you're in a region that's not LCK or LPL, if you at least have one quality that puts you above like the other players domestically, that's like a very good thing to have, because it's not like in LCK and LPL, pretty much you can expect all of the supports to have all the skills they need, and then when you're ordering them, it's about like what do they not have. So like Keria does not have the ability to play engage supports at a top level. That's like the reason why he's an A tier, right? Whereas you look at the supports in S tier, it's like On can do everything. But then once you get like farther down the tier list, it's instead of what can they not do, it's like what can they do at like a reasonable level. So like Busio can play range supports and like priority laning supports at a reasonable level. So that enough for me that's enough for me to push him to the top of C tier. Whereas Core JJ for me, I feel like Core peaked in 2020 and has not been the same player since. I've been pretty low on Core for the past few years, honestly. I think he was really good in 2020, but ever since then, he has just not looked nearly as good to me. So that's why I have Core in C. That's just a general opinion that I've had. I never thought Core was at the top level of LCS supports like for the past couple of years or so. If shot calling is counted into this, would Core, JJ, and Lehens be considered one grade above? So the problem with that is that I don't have access to their comms. Even if I did have access to their comms, it's not like I would understand what language they're speaking most of the time. So I have no idea. Like I can't judge their shot calling. I'm not going to, in the same way that I refuse to pin every like all of the team's objective problems on the jungler, I refuse to pin all the shot calling on the support, because I don't think that's how it works. Like for example, some of the comms that we do have are like the K Corp comms, and like Targamas doesn't contribute anything towards his team's shot calling. Like that team's shot calling was pretty much all upset and bow. So it's like from the outside looking in, you can never know who's actually calling for what unless you have actively listened to the comms, which I just haven't. So I don't know who's saying what. So I'm just judging like Core based on like my opinion of him for the last few years. I don't think he's looked that great in lane. I don't think his engages have looked nearly as good as they did in 2020. So I just don't think he has like any of the strengths that he used to have. All right, let's get into the minor region supports and we'll be done with it. Here is the problem with minor region supports. I touched on this a little bit in Worlds 2023, because like if you look at this list, your initial first impression is like, oh wow, that guy has all the minor region supports in D tier. Like wow, he's just that's the opinion that everybody has. Like whoop de doo. But the thing with minor region supports that you have to look for when you're watching their games is what kind of plays do they go for? Are they going for plays that are only punishing what the enemy team is doing? Or are they going for plays that are proactively pushing forward their own team's agenda? And the thing that minor region supports always do is that they only go for plays that punish what the opponent is doing. That is like my biggest gripe with Woody, for example, and why I have Woody here. Like if you notice, the entire rest of his team is much higher up. Like Betty's in C, Maple's in C, Junja's in B, Ozzy's in C. Like the only person on PSG who is in D tier is Woody, and that's because every single time I watch Woody, he doesn't do anything. He just sits there and reacts to what the opponent does, and he only goes in if his team is going in, and like he doesn't do anything like proactive for himself. So like my opinion of Woody has just like gone way down over the years because I just feel like he doesn't do anything. Like if you look at my Worlds 2023 tier list, the only two minor region supports that kind of like broke out of the mold of all the other minor region supports were Palette and Seos, because when you watch Palette and Seos play, they're actually doing stuff. They're moving around the map. They're creating the plays. They're looking for opportunities to punish the opponent when the opponent is playing right. Whereas you compare that with a support like Harp from the LJL. The narrative around Harp is that he's like insane at hook champions. That he'll like pick Blitzcrank and like he'll hit all of these hooks and like get his team snowballing off of like the hooks and stuff. But you actually watch the games and he's throwing out a hook at a target that's standing still that has flash up and the target's still getting hit. Like his Blitzcrank isn't actually good. He's just playing against bad people. And that's the deal with most of these minor region supports, is that they're just playing against players that aren't that good, so they don't have to do anything. So when you're looking at the minor region supports, you have to look at the supports that are actually doing something. For me, the only support that's even remotely like that comes from the minor regions is Ackerman. Ackerman is the only support out of this entire pool that I've ever seen like go for plays that act under the assumption that the opponent is doing the right thing. Honestly, Ackerman is like pretty interesting too. Like he even plays like Pike sometimes as one of his trademarks. And I mean, like, you know, if somebody's playing Pike that they're making proactive plays. Like that's like the entire champion, right? I feel like Ackerman also moves very fast. I talked about that when I was talking about Snaker. I feel like Snaker and Ackerman are very fast to adapt to situations and like create plays and punish the opponent like with the snap of a finger. Much faster than Woody, Elio, or Redbird. That being said, the reason why I don't have Ackerman in C, which I guess I should say, I think it's perfectly acceptable to put Ackerman in C. 100%. The reason why I don't have Ackerman in C is the same reason why I have Snaker in D, which is that Ackerman has been to international tournaments before. He has not performed. I mean, like, Snaker hasn't been to internationals, but, like, Ackerman's been to internationals and hasn't performed. And then, same deal with Snaker. I don't think bot lane is LLA's strength. So, just because you're at the top of your role doesn't necessarily mean that my opinion of you is going to be that high. So until I actually see Ackerman do something impressive against teams that aren't LLA teams, I just don't have like full confidence to say he's on the same level as a major region support. Because even though Ackerman shows flashes of being proactive, like a lot of the other support players don't in minor regions, I just don't have any proof that he can do it against competition above his own domestic level. As for Woody, Elio, and Redbird, I mean, I don't even really need to go into them individually, but I guess they all have the exact same problem, which is that none of them go for proactive plays. They only react off of when the opponent does something wrong. Woody, of the three, has the best mechanics, I guess. That's like the one thing you can say. But he's very slow to react to things. He feels very unstable for the most part. It feels like he's just sitting there and waiting for his team to do the work. Elio is more aggressive than Woody. He's definitely a lot more aggressive. But I also think that that's just because his team is more aggressive. Like, I don't feel like Elio is dictating what his team is doing. I feel like Kiaya and Levi are dictating what Gam is doing, and Elio's just kind of playing passenger. And then just so happens to like also be pretty aggressive with them. I feel like Redbird is the type of support who like goes in, like he's like I see an angle, and then he like goes in and gets like a crazy 4-man knockup, and then like dies, and his team can't follow up because it was actually a terrible engage, and like it looked cool, but it didn't do anything, and he just inted. Like that's the type of support that Redbird is. Like he just, I feel like he doesn't when he plays. I don't think he takes into account what his teammates can actually do to follow up. He's just looking for like how can I maximize how much CC I'm outputting at the start of the fight, and like I feel like he doesn't really think in layers past that. So that's why I have like Redbird also in D tier. I don't think any of the supports are F tiers. I feel like most of these supports are at or near the top of their own support pools domestically, so there's no reason to put them in F. I don't think any of them, with the exception of Redbird, like runs it down necessarily. So yeah, they're all just kind of D tier. All right, and that's all the players. So I put the players on this spreadsheet. Now it might be kind of hard to see, so I can actually like zoom it up. So this is like a chart that has everything that I just went over, all the tier lists. You can see the number here. This is their ranking, and then all the players in order. So you can like look at this, take it in. It's color coded. These are all the colors of the teams. The way that this works is because I think this is like a cool visual. So they're ranking, they're given points, right? So if you're the best in your role, you get 1 point. If you're the second best, you get 2 points. Then I went over here, and these are the tiers that I put them in. This isn't actually in order. It's in order of roles. So you see 3 top laners, there's the junglers, there's the mid laners, there's the bot laners, there's support. So it's not actually an order of skill. Don't go thinking that I think that like Bin is better than Elk, because I don't. It's just an order of top jungle, mid support, or mid bot support. But point being is that this is a visual representation of what tier I put them in, and then I assigned each tier to be a different point value. So if you were put in S tier, you're worth 1 point. If you're put in A tier, you're worth 2 points. So like using this, I can create a point value for each player. So like let's take TN for example. TN was put in B tier, so that's 3 points. And he was ranked 5th, so he's an 8-point player. So 5 plus 3 is 8, so he's an 8-point player. And then I take that information and I put it in here, and this is every single player's point value. And then you can add it up, and then you've got the point total. So BLG, if you put all their players together, their point total is 13, 19, 23. And it's just cool because I like doing this because it creates a visual representation of like how good I think each team's players are, and then I get to see like what my ranking of the teams would be based on player skill alone. And then what's really cool is that I can compare it with my actual team tier list, and I can see how it looks different. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to do that now. I'm going to create the team's tier list like right here. This is what my list would look like if I was only going off of player strength. So that's why I like doing this, is because it gives me like a starting point. But then of course the thing is, teams are more than just their players. Like there's a lot more that goes into how good a team is than just how good their individual players are. Gen.G versus BLG, which team is better? Very much up for debate. I think it's reasonable to have either in front of the other. The main argument for which team is better has been boiled down to this. BLG is extremely aggressive. Shun, Elk, and On like work together extremely well to create early pressure and early dives. Then you have Bin and Knight, who are like 2 of the best players in their role, holding down the fort in the solo lanes, versus Gen.G, who is like viewed as like this super crazy superior macro team, who will bleed you out. The argument for putting BLG above Gen.G is that BLG just straight up has the better bot lane. There's like no way to dodge it or go around it. BLG just had the better bot lane. Um, Most of the people I've seen who think that BLG are better than Gen G essentially think that BLG will just move too fast and play too aggressive. My opinion of it is that if I picture Gen G and BLG playing a 5 game series, the way that I picture it going is that I feel like Elk and On are going to like destroy Pays and Lehens for like either like game one or like game one and game two. But I feel like when you have Keen, Canyon, and Chovy, you're not going to get lane diffed in the solo lanes, and you're not going to get jungle diffed in jungle. And I think that Gen G overall like has better macro. So I think what's going to happen is that they're going to find something for Pays to do, like some kind of champion that he can play, and he can just play to not lose. And I think that Gen G's macro is just going to like overpower BLG. I think that they're going to get ran bot lane for the first couple of games. They're going to figure out a solution, and then they're just going to like be a smarter team once they've figured out what to do. And then of course the flip side would be, well, okay, maybe BLG just goes too fast and they completely just like snowball roll over Gen G before Gen G figures out an answer. I think that either take is reasonable. I just think that I trust that Gen G will figure out how to survive bot lane, and then they'll be able to get to their like superior mid and late game. T1 not an S tier, they're an A tier. The reason why I think T1 is an A tier is mainly because of how they looked against Hanwha Life. I know that they managed to bounce back in lower bracket and win, and I know that when they got 3-0, they were under the DDoS attacks. And I know that they took Gen G to 5 games, but at the end of the day, they still got 3-0'd by HLE. And I don't have the highest opinion of all of those players. Like, I don't think that Doran and Peanut are like that amazing. That to me just kind of puts a stain on T1, and I don't want to put them in S tier because of it. Top esports, I feel like BLG is better than they were last year, and I think that the rest of the LPL is worse. So like comparatively, if you look at the top 3 teams in LPL this split, it was BLG, JDG, and Top Esports. And like objectively, JDG is worse. Like they just have a worse roster this split than they did last split. Like their team has like Flandre on it. So when you have, I don't know. Point being, I don't think it's that impressive that Top Esports got second, because their competition was NIP, who has like Aki on it. My opinion on Aki isn't that high. My opinion on Photic and Juo is like it flips back and forth. So that team I'm not super high on. LNG like completely choked it. They could not figure out what they were doing this year, so they didn't look very good. JDG is just an active downgrade to where they were. So it's like you look at LPL this year, and it just feels like, other than BLG, they're just not as good as they were. And that's it. I'm gonna move G2 up actually, and I'm gonna. Yeah, I didn't actually do this already. I screwed this up. So G2 is also in B tier. I meant to put G2 in B tier. It's completely. I forgot to like mess around with Europe. So G2 I have in B tier instead of A tier because I kind of agree with the narrative that LEC has just not looked that good this year. I feel like the entire region as a whole has been playing like very sloppily. And then so G2 being able to win back-to-back splits, like that's impressive. Yes, they didn't drop a single series while they were doing it. That's impressive. Cool. Where's their competition? Who have they actually beaten? And if they haven't beaten anyone, then the only thing that you can fall back on is how they performed at their last international tournament. And at their last international, G2 beat the 4th seed from LPL, the 4th seed from LCK, and then they didn't even make it to top 8. So not super impressive from G2 at Worlds. I don't think they've beaten anyone substantial in LEC. So we're sticking G2 in B tier. However, I do think it's very apparent that G2 is like a step above everybody else in the LEC. Like obviously they won back to back. They didn't drop a single series while they were doing it. Like They have all these creative picks that like throw corkscrews in draft. They make it like very difficult to predict what they're going to pick and how you're going to play against it. All of that stuff is a positive. I just don't think G2 is an A tier team. I also don't think G2 is as good as top esports. I've been seeing a lot of people saying that they think G2 is better than top esports. I don't think it's true. I feel like most of the people who are saying that only saw finals, um, and they saw Jackie Love and Mako lose bot lane, and they saw Cream and they were like, "Who is this guy?" But in reality, Cream is an extremely good player. Jackie Love and Mako have been top level ADC and support for the entire year. Honestly, I'm gaslighting myself. I think top esports is A tier actually. I think they're worse than T1, like for sure, 100%. But I mean, their team is 369, man. Like they can't be B tier. They have 369. Come on now. I don't think they're on the same tier as G2. I think top esports is just better than them. All right, yeah, I'm okay with that. G2 in B tier. All right, then nobody in C tier. I like decided that a while ago. Like I think there's a gap. There was never meant to be anybody in C tier. I just completely forgot to screw around with the LEC teams, and my reasoning is that I don't think Fnatic is as good as Team Liquid and FlyQuest. After watching all of the games, I do agree that from top to bottom, LCS looked better than LEC. But I don't actually think that's because LCS like looked better. I think it's just because LEC looked worse. So like usually you would see something like I don't know Fnatic here and then like the LCS one seed like also in C tier, right? That's but the problem that I kind of went over earlier is that I feel like the LCS rosters they all have like weak spots on them. Like FlyQuest, their ADC is a rookie. He hasn't looked super great. Bot lane pool as a whole is really weak. Cloud9 has the best roster on paper, but they like super underperformed. Like Berserker just does not look like the same player that he used to. Vulcan doesn't look like as good of a fit as Sven was. Then you look at Team Liquid, and you're like, okay, Team Liquid was supposed to be like a fifth, sixth place team. Like people think that APA has champion pool issues. Yon has been weak for a while. Umpty is like just straight up a downgrade to Pioshik. Core has not looked that great like in recent years. So it's like in my opinion, the LCS from top to bottom just is not that impressive. And the other like supporting piece of evidence for that is that this year in the LCS, it felt like anybody could beat anyone. Like Shopify Rebellion, Immortals, and Dignitas felt like they could take games off of FlyQuest, Team Liquid, and Cloud9 like whenever they wanted. And it's like if that's happening, then like yes, I agree that the region is probably like stronger from top to bottom, but I think it also means that the top teams are like not as dominant as they used to be. So I view the LCS as like having a lower ceiling as it did in the past, even if it's overall like better on average. And I think that the LEC minus G2 has looked really sloppy. So that goes for Fnatic too. I think Fnatic has a lot of weak points in their roster. I think Oscar, Humanoid, and Noah have all been underperforming. They're pretty much just like Jun and Razork try their best to carry the team is what Fnatic is. So I have Fnatic as below Team Liquid and FlyQuest. I think FlyQuest will perform better than Team Liquid. I know that Team Liquid beat them in finals. Also to note, FlyQuest beat Team Liquid earlier in playoffs. And I also think that FlyQuest just has a better roster on paper. I think FlyQuest lost finals because Bwipo and Inspired underperformed. I don't think you can count on Bwipo and Inspired to underperform in multiple series. I think they'll be fine. They have a really good ceiling. Bwipo will do fine in lane against most of the top laners, I think. Inspired will hold his own against most of the junglers. So I feel like FlyQuest just has less glaring issues than Team Liquid on a roster basis. Then moving on, I think PSG is in the same tier as LEC and LCS. Their roster looks really scary. Like they have, obviously Junjia is a better player than like any of those teams has. Like we know that Maple did decently in LCS. We know that Betty survived in LPL. So like PSG overall, they just have a solid roster. They don't play very fast. The reason why I don't have PSG in C tier is because PSG plays very, very slowly. They don't look for proactive plays very often. They just look to punish what the opponents are doing. So like imagine Gen G, but like really shitty version of it. Like they just kind of like play slow and they play around objectives and for team fights, but they don't do anything with laning advantages. They don't roam around the map. They just kind of wait for the opponents to screw something up. And like for example, like when they beat CFO, like CFO's roster is Karsa, Gory, and Sordar. And I know that like people think of that trio and they're like, oh, this is a super team. But then the other thing that comes with that trio is that those are like three of the most like inconsistent players ever. Like if you're going to be a team that does nothing but punishes the opponent's mistakes, having playing against a team with Karsa, Sordar, and Gory on it is like a blessing. Like those guys make so many mistakes, you know. So I feel like PSG will completely falter against any of these top five teams. I don't think PSG like stands a lick of a chance against any of these top five because they will not make a single proactive play against them and they'll just get bled out and they'll lose. And I think when it comes to FlyQuest, Team Liquid, and Fnatic, I think that PSG is like relatively the same level, but just a little bit worse. I think PSG has the worst support of the bunch. I think they have the worst top laner of the bunch. I like Team Liquid and FlyQuest both have very strong top laners. Fnatic not so much, but I still believe Oscar is equal to the same level that Ozzy is roughly. So I just don't see where I don't think PSG has the firepower to definitively be better than any of those teams. Is where I'm at. Loud I also have in D tier, but it's definitely a much weaker D tier than the other four teams. Like if I could make another tier and call it E tier and put Loud in there, I probably would, but I just don't like using E, so I don't. The reason why I have Loud and D tier is because I do think that they're just better than Gam and Astral. I'll talk about those teams later. But I think Loud is just an active downgrade to what they were in 2023 and 2022 summer. The support swap really hurt them. It feels like Route is not the same kind of like dominant laner that he used to be. It also feels like he's having a champion pool issue. Like for example, in finals, Loud spent the first part of finals like super prioritizing Zeri because Route is good at Zeri, but it just wasn't working. And the only band-aid solution they had for it was to put Route on Varus. At that point, you're putting your late game hyper carry on like a champion that doesn't really do that much late game, and they really only like they played Pain to 5 games. Like that's not how Loud used to be. Like the Pain roster is pretty much the exact same as it was, and they really haven't changed much about their playstyle. The only thing that's changed is that Loud got rid of their best player, and now instead of 3-0ing Pain, they're 2-2, and then game 5 is super close. Like I wasn't sure that Loud was gonna win. I was watching the series, and and game 5 was close, and like I don't know. I just don't have the same faith in Loud that I used to. I feel like that support sub out just really hurt them, and I just don't feel confident that they're going to beat PSG because they were not as good as PSG in 2023. It felt like it was winnable. It felt like they had like points of strength and that they were like that it would be a competitive series when like the two times that they played, but they never won. And now Loud is just weaker and PSG is stronger. So how can they win now? You know, I still love the CB lol. I still love Loud. Like Robo Tanones are two of my favorite players to watch. I think that the other players all have great personalities, but it's just I just don't think that they're as good. And I know that that sucks for a lot of my Brazilian fan base to hear. I know that when this video goes out, they'll all be sad that I think that Loud is not going to beat very many teams. But it's just true. I don't think Redbird has what Seos had, the same kind of identity. So I'm not high on this team in this tournament. I do think that Loud is better than Gam and Astral, so I'll talk about it. Why is Gam an F tier? Gam is an F tier because their team got eviscerated by the match fixing scandal, 1, and 2, because they still, like the VCS as a whole, still has a stain on it because of MSI 2023. They lost some games to teams that they really should not have lost to. They lost to LLA, and then later down the line, they also ended up losing to Loud. Now, they ended up beating Loud back, and they also ended up making it to the Rumble stage, so, like, that's great for them. But then they got to the Rumble stage, and they didn't look too great there either. They did win one series, I believe. Okay, yeah, they beat TL. That's, like, GAM's, like, one saving grace. So, with that in mind, last year, GAM lost to LLA, they lost to CB LOL, they beat TL. Fantastic. So, VCS, definitely not clear cut that they're better than all of the other minor regions. And then the nail in the coffin for putting them in F tier is the match fixing scandal. They really got the short end of the stick. They have arguably the worst ADC in VCS. They have a mid laner who has never played in VCS before because he's young. So it's like, yes, they have Kiaya. Kiaya's really good. Yes, they have Levi. Levi's passable. But I just feel like the team really suffered from losing two of their players. So I don't think that they're in D tier. And then that brings me to the last team, Astral. I also don't think Astral is like that terrible of a team. I just think comparatively they're not going to beat anyone because Astral's big issue that I've touched on earlier when I was talking about Jose Diodo is that these guys just do not know how to play early game at all. They don't know how to set up an objective. Like, so many times they just go for an objective that they cannot go for, and then the enemy team shows up and they're like, oh shit, the enemy team showed up, and then they just have to leave and they lose the objective. Like, if you watch Astral's games, they continuously walk to an objective, lose the objective, walk to another objective, lose that one. Now they're down 3 dragons. What now? Oh, we're just better mechanical players, so we're going to win a team fight and then win the game. That's what Astral does. They lose all the objectives, but then still win the game because they're better than the other players in their region. And it's like, that's just not acceptable when you're at an international tournament. You can't win games if you sack every objective and just pray that you're better than everybody else. Now, I said in my breakdown video, I said if Astral can make it through their muddy early games, then they have really fast snap judgments and they all have good mechanics and maybe they can take a game. And like I do believe that. It's just the problem is that their early games are so muddy that even against teams that they should be destroying in their own region, they're still going down 3-0 in dragons. And it's not like they're sacking the dragons on purpose to like dive top or to like get gold on the map. Like, they're trying to contest the dragons, but they just don't have the right setup and they don't have the right lane states and they can't do it and they just have to pull off of it. They just don't know how to set up an objective. And like you watch the series and there's so many like obvious things that could get them the objective that they're just missing out on. Like, one of the dragons that they lost in finals, they were like, they had the setup, they could have gone to take it, but they called it off because it was like it was like a 4v4 scenario and they were like, they didn't want to take the risk. But you look at the thing that they didn't look at was that the enemy Draven had no mana. Like, if Draven doesn't have mana, he doesn't do damage, right? It's like, those are the types of things where it's like, any other team in a major region would be like, Draven has no mana, let's take the dragon because they can never beat us in a fight. Like, they have a tank jungler, a tank support, a Draven with no mana, and a Talia. Like, they can't fight, they don't deal any damage, let's take the dragon. But it's like, Astral, their team doesn't think about that kind of stuff. Like, they're not considering those types of elements, and they're instead just giving over objectives for free early game, and then they just win because their players are better mechanically. So that's why I have Astral in F tier. Yeah, I mean, that's all I got. That's my team tier list. But you can see, like again, I want to stress that if you were to look at my tier list, like, just from players, it's different. Like, this is my player tier list. Or like my ranking, like, based on just player strength. But it's very different. Like, I have Gen G above BLG. I have T1 above top esports. According to this, PSG is better than Fly and TL, but then you look at this and I have PSG below Fly and TL. Like, so this is my team tier list. Top lane, jungle, mid lane, bot lane, support. I don't really have anything else to say. I'll do predictions maybe later, but not right now. So if you're watching this on YouTube, thanks for watching. I hope that if you're going to, I don't mind if you like disagree with me and you want to like shit on my opinions, like, that's totally fine. If you do that, please like actually just like watch the video first and like actually get context for it. I'm not going to beat a dead horse. Like, if somebody if somebody's like asking me why I think Astral is worse than Gam, it's like I explained why Astral is worse than Gam, so it's like I don't want to explain something that I already explained. But feel free to disagree, and like maybe you see angles where you're like, no, BLG is gonna destroy Genji because they have like way better bot lane, and they'll just get like super big leads, or like maybe Astral will win more games because their players are pretty good mechanically. Like, that's fine. But yeah, I mean, that's it. I hope you enjoyed it. I know that it's a little bit late. I apologize for that. I was trying to deal with... This is my last semester of university, so like these are my last set of finals. They're all happening like right now, right before MSI, so it was just really bad timing-wise. But I was able to get it out. Like, it's there. I'll get this video out like right before MSI starts. So yeah, that's where we're at. Thanks for watching.